Sixth term in the House. I have served 9.5 years. And as you know, the House works through the seniority system. And I'm currently completing my fourth term on the Energy and Commerce Committee, which is one of two Super 8 committees in the House. The other Super 8 committee is the Ways and Means Committee. You're not allowed to be on both, and most members are on neither. Freshmen are not permitted on these committees, and I was gratified to be able to become a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee in my second term. So I've served on it for 4 terms. And the provenance of the district I serve is that the member tries to get on the Energy and Commerce Committee in his second term. This is true of predecessors of mine. And that is because it has jurisdiction over many areas that are critically important to the congressional district, particularly the Health Subcommittee, which deals with the better health of the American nation, and perforce with the pharmaceutical and medical device industry. And the district I serve has more pharmaceutical and medical device employees than any other district in the United States. It also has jurisdiction over the telecom industry, and we have an enormous amount of telecom in the district. It's the most productive committee in the House and the most productive committee on Capitol Hill. More bills are signed into law coming out of the committee than any other committee, either in the House or Senate. 217 bills have been signed into law since I've been a member of the committee. Most of those bills by President Obama, 22 of them by President Trump. I'm proud of the accomplishments in which I've been involved. 21st Century Cures, the most important piece of legislation to pass in the prior Congress, completely updating how we bring medicines to market in this country. Significant new funding for the National Institutes of Health, and various other matters bringing us into the 21st century. CHIP legislation, and one of my first votes in Congress was regarding CHIP legislation. This involves the better health of children in this country. Reauthorization of 9/11 health care funding, Zika funding, and then most recently, and very important to the nation, a series of bills, a package of bills on the opiate crisis. And NBC has said what we have done is the most ambitious congressional push yet to address the opiate crisis. It was packaged into one bill that has passed the House, H.R. 6. It's now in the Senate. The component of which I am proudest is the bill that I sponsored that was folded into the larger whole regarding the opiate crisis and infectious diseases, HIV and other similar diseases. And that bill, my co-sponsor was Joseph Kennedy of Massachusetts. Regarding what I do more locally and perhaps more directly, I have been involved in strengthening mental health legislation, parity for mental health care centers, and I've worked with Doris Matsui of Sacramento, California on that. She obviously is on the Democratic side. Breast care reconstructive legislation, stopping the counterfeit of drugs, modernizing rural health care centers, protecting consumers' First Amendment rights. There had been in many organizations the requirement that if you purchased a service, you could not disparage the organization online. That, of course, violates the First Amendment rights of the American people. And my legislation does not permit that, and the FTC last week took its first action in this regard. I've also been the sponsor of anti-spoofing legislation. This is where those who pretend to be in the government, perhaps the IRS or another governmental authority, will telephone citizens, particularly senior citizens, trying to victimize them. Regarding the district and the state, I have fought for Gateway tunnel funding, and I led the effort on the floor in an amendment that was proffered by a conservative Republican from North Carolina to do away with Gateway funding, and I was successful in that regard. We brought $26 million to New Jersey for the opiate crisis, and a couple weeks ago, for example, $6.5 million to the Christopher and Dana Reeves Foundation in Milburn Township that deals with spinal cord research. I'm responsible for the federal government's removing mercury from Hillsborough. The EPA is going to put an American cyanamide site in Bridgewater on its fast track list, and I believe later this month we will be announcing fast track of a site in Chester. I've been very much involved in funding for completion of the study of the Rawway River Basin. There is significant flooding in the Union County portion of the district I serve, Cranford and other areas. And then regarding constituent services, we have closed 5,000 pieces of casework since I've been in Congress. I have given back $1 million, more than $1 million to the taxpayers. We do not utilize all of the funding that we receive. We give it back about $200,000 in each 2-year term. I am responsible.
You mean in terms of staffing?
Correct. Correct. Each member is allotted a particular amount of funding. People in the West get a little more because of their travel costs are significantly higher than our travel costs. Mm-hmm. My travel is compensated by the federal government between here and Washington. That's usually by train. I have the advantage of not having to fly across the continent twice a week. But we are allotted funds, and I try to practice what I preach. And we have given back more funding than we believe in any other member of Congress in the United States. We've opened up the reports of the Congressional Research Service. This is part of the Library of Congress. I'm personally responsible for opening up their reports to the public. I have held 47 town halls in person, and at least that number on the telephone. And the first town hall meeting I held during the Trump presidency attracted 1,400 residents, 900 in the main room at Raritan Valley Community College and 500 in the spillover room. And it was carried live on CNN across the globe. And the reason I know that is that my family are friends with a young man of Filipino ancestry who was involved in taking care of my father's health before my father died, and I saw him 2 or 3 weeks later in High Bridge in Hunterdon County, and he said he had seen me on television on CNN, and I said, "Oh, were you tuning in here?" And he said, "No, I was in Manila visiting relatives." I believe that I have held more in-person town hall meetings than any other member of the congressional delegation in New Jersey. I don't